Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around, it's some Skaven against vampire accounts. Or Vampire Coast. I do apologize there, look at that, these aren't the vampire accounts, they're Vampire Coast. And this time around we're running a bit of a super wide build and something slightly different from the cheesy comp I ran in when I was doing the live stream. So for my lord, I'm once again running Skrulk. I want to go super wide and really rely on the DACO this faction provided and try to essentially outshoot the zombies. So for my lord, I decided to roll with Skrulk. I decided to play a bit safer with him, and I think last time when he died so quickly, it might have been because I don't know if Aranessa's attacks are still bugged. She did have a bug where she'd hit like 4 times at once, which is pretty bonkers, so that might have been why he died so quickly. I don't know if that bug's still going on, but I figured, Skrulk would be good for his debuffs, for his Pestilent Breath, which is great against squishy crap, Wither for the armor debuff, and then Vermintide and Pestilent Breath to oversaturate backlines. Then of course you do have Stand Your Ground, Rod of Corruption, and Liber Buonicus for all that damage output and survivability. For my front line, I went a little bit more elite this time around, brought some clan rats with shields mixed with Stormvermin, because Stormvermin I figured would just be able to chew through cheap, trashy Vampire Coast infantry, and hold okay if push came to shove against something like these Depth Guard. Out on the very flanks, we do have some Skaven slaves. Most of them are just a vanilla variant. One unit of spears over here, just meant to swamp my opponent. Once again, these guys, if they can get on the back line, they have bad melee stats, but good enough to where they can trade with, say, zombie gunners and take them down okay. Though certainly not quickly or efficiently. Elsewhere, we've got a whole huge firing blob on either end. We've got gutter runners with poison, a single unit of them, and then 3 night runners with slings. And then a single unit of Death Runners out on the wide flank. And I'd expected my opponent to deploy somewhere around here, and then sort of figure I'd pincer him and shoot him down and get Death Runners in, but he did not. He actually deployed here in the back, which means that, that we're going to have to reposition our entire army. But he's definitely doing some work already, but these Gutter Runners, all these Night Runners, they've got a lot of damage output potential, and I figured against the lightly armored, unshielded, slow infantry, this could be very useful. Now for my opponent, he did go with a super cheap front line of zombie pirate gunnery mobs mixed with zombie pirate gunnery mobs with hand cannons. These guys are the shotgun armed variant, and they are backed by a whole bunch of deckhands. The Tide of Skjold making up the center here, backed up by normal deckhands on the flanks. These guys, I'm pretty sure, won't even win against clan rats, much less against Stormvermin, but it's a cheap chaff line to protect the meat in the back. These 2 carronades. The main reason I didn't actually bother with warp lightning cannons in this matchup, basically these guys, because I knew I wouldn't be able to outduel carronades. Most likely. And I really hate the fact that Stormvermin artillery can't go into artillery duels whatsoever, but you gotta adjust. In the back line, my opponent does have triple depth guard, so these guys will probably mulch through any infantry I have if they get into close quarters with him, but lacking shields, and with the Weeping Blade on Death Runners and the Withering on Skrulk, we should be able to hopefully shoot them down. Finally, here in the back, we do have Luther Harkon, who is going to be an absolute beast against someone like Skrulk. He does, of course, have his magic debuffs with Slot and Gold. He increases miscast chance and reduces physical resistance with Disrupted, which he gets every time he shoots. I think when he's on foot, he gets it in melee too. He's got Power Siphon, increasing ability recharge, Hornswaggle for the debuffs, of course, Death Shriek, Magical Void, which improves magic resistance, so a bunch of bonkers buffs. But my opponent did sacrifice bringing a caster, and that's one of the things I was thinking about would be a problem before. So Luther Harkon and Araness Assault Spite. This roster isn't that cheap, especially if you want to be getting some good damage output early on. And with that in mind, because the hot roster is not that cheap, lords and heroes like Luther, if you bring someone like that who doesn't have magic, you're kind of hurting yourself a bit. Regardless, we are going to start pushing in rather quickly over here. You can see we're trying to get some shots, and we're swinging the Skaven slaves out the flanks before pushing in from the front. We're trying to sort of pressure this shooting back, because we do outrange them by a bit. We've got 140 range on all these troops, to the 90 on these guys, and is it 90 on the shotguns as well? It is. We're just trying to push them back, get a volley or 2 in, and then back off very quickly. My opponent, unfortunately, is actually going to get on the ridge here, and I think that's going to increase his range a little bit when he turns around. I was trying to get on the hand cannons too, which was a bit of a mistake. Rather than the zombie pirate gunnery mobs, I wanted to get on these guys and damage them a good bit. So here, the formation's just constantly shifting. I don't really know why, but the formation changes, and we're going to take a Withering Volley to the butt and lose like 5 units or 4 bottles there of gutter runners. So that's sad, poor rats. But we are able to extricate ourselves. Even as the cannons continue to rake our front line, you can see they're taking down some Stormmen. But these courageous rats, they're going to come in, and we're going to start slugging it out. You can see these rats over here pushing into range. My opponent is flexing his depth guard around to meet the flankers. but that, and as well as the shooting to try to meet them, and that is opening up opportunities for us to start peppering these guys down, because obviously cannons are not going to be able to suppress this firing mob. It has to be these guys, but they have the close to range, which is going to be really difficult for them because they're just so slow and so short range themselves. Alright, the Skaven slaves are just a distraction, a bit of a distraction Carnifex, though definitely not on that level of power. Stroke over here takes a few volleys from the pistols, but honestly it doesn't really matter as the lines are now clashing, and my opponent is suddenly forced to turn around. Pestilent Breath does go down over here. Probably should have timed it or positioned it maybe a little differently, try to get more damage on the Tidal Skjold, but we do mess up this zombie pirate mob pretty well. And now the lines are closing. You can see all the DACA coming down on the zombie pirate gunnery mobs with the hand cannons. This was my prime target. I wanted to get these guys off the field and dead, and we're able to DACA them down pretty good. In the meantime, Skaven slaves collapsing on the flank, and the Death Runners at this point are going to start running away and baiting the Death Guard. Over here, same thing. Skaven slaves trying to get around the flanks, kind of sitting around on the side and waiting for an opportunity to dive in. As my opponent is starting to commit his forces into the melee to save this fight. Over here, Skrulk is going to start getting chipped away at by this mean man up in the sky. Luther Harkon with the pistol is basically uncontested, and there's not much I can do about him. He does actually miss the breath there, but regardless, we do overrun the Tidal Skjold here, and we're certainly breaching the back line. It's definitely going to start this damage is definitely going to start adding up, and Skrulk, unarmored and with little in the way of survivability, is going to start hurting. That said, the front line going decisively in favor of the Clan Rats and the Stormmen, and although these Depth Guard are going to start diving into the back line and actually melt these Skaven slaves, that is going to open an opportunity for me in the meantime. And you can see Death Runner is still running away. Death Runner is a pretty expensive unit. Can't go toe-to-toe with Depth Guard unless I'm very much mistaken, but I'm pretty sure they can't. But they can distract them. They can waste their time, and that's what really matters here. In the meantime, cannons are being compromised over here. You can see the Carronade as well as the zombie pirate gunnery mobs being torn down by Skaven slaves. And over here, Skrulk is a shifting flank. You can see the Depth Guard did chase the Skaven slaves a little bit, but now collapsing on the Clan Rats, who they'd normally slaughter very, very quickly. For those of you who don't know, these guys will massacre low-end infantry, but not when they misdeploy like this, because they're now open to all that fire. And now the Death Runners are coming in, dashing on all fours, and they are going to get a glorious charge, just shanking these guys, hitting them with the Weeping Blade. And in come all those pebbles. Against 45 armor, these guys are suddenly not so tough. And you can see they're just falling apart to the rats. You can just see just how fast they fall apart. And in comes a Wither on top of that, so 15 armor at this point. They are basically a unit of Bretonian peasants or something, armor-wise, and they just don't last at all. So Death Runners, guys, really great unit. I did put them on my list of hidden gems for a reason. They're really good in situations like this. Here, unfortunately, they did trade okay with the Depth Guard at first, but despite the Depth Guarding in the charge and me not microing them, but now we're still running. We're just letting these guys chase us on a wild goose chase. As our slingers start melting this backline, our Stormmen finally start pushing in. Unfortunately, though, Skrulk here is kind of falling apart. His leadership's just not holding up. We do get the second unit of Depth Guard into a similarly compromising position as we did last time, and you can see they just get massacred. I could have perhaps fired on the Red Duke, but I just didn't. Or not Red Duke, Luther Harkon. I'm like full of misstatements here. I don't know why I called him the Red Duke, but regardless, he's being a nuisance. He's going to actually rout Skrulk here. Although we pepper him down a little bit with our slings, it's just not going to be enough. Skaven, with the fact that Warplane cannons are so easy to suppress, and with the relatively non-AP on the Night Runners, the low AP of things such as, with the very poor AP of things like this, and the very bad accuracy of things like Lobotiers, are in a pretty horrible situation to try to shoot down flyers in a situation like this. So yeah, it's a struggle. We are going to do some damage to Luther, force him off. And elsewhere, the battle is just a disaster for my opponent. His Depth Guard way out of position. Over here, these guys are clumped up on top of each other. I should have spread them out much sooner, but we are going to get the Death Runners into the periphery here. Start slowing down this Depth Guard, actually pick off model, and realizing that these guys are way too blobbed up to get good shots, we're actually going to be trying to reposition, like spread these guys out a little bit. So we can actually start shipping down this Depth Guard. Elsewhere, the Red Duke does dive in. I just called him the Red Duke again. Luther Harkon does dive in, disrupting these Stormmen. It doesn't matter. He's a Blood Knight. It's whatever. They're all the same. But either way, he dives in against the Stormmen. We're going to dive in back with our Death Runners. Right now, he's debuffed, of course, with the Weeping Blade, making him very, very weak against all these pebbles coming out from the Night Runners and the Gutter Runners. We're going to get another nasty volley in there. Over here, the Depth Guard is getting torn apart, and they're actually going to fall apart. We actually disengage with the Death Runners to make the engagement easier. And at this point, my opponent's army is going to suffer losses and shatter. So, win for the Skaven. You can see our fine Clan Rats over here overrunning the back line, and it's going to be GG. So, I do think this match, despite the fact that it did come out as a win for me, it did show some issues I think Skaven might have in this matchup. One of which is their lack of proper anti-air tools. It can be a bit of an issue against High Elves already and Wood Elves, but, well, Wood Elves is one of the matchups I often say is borderline unwinnable for Skaven. And it's and Wood Elves don't have artillery to effectively shut down your warplaning cannons. And for High Elves, once again, it can be an issue, but at least there the projectiles are not super fast, and High Elves don't have quite the level of artillery play that Skaven have. So, or that the Empire Coast has. But I could definitely see these Flying Lords just chipping away at your Lord being an incredible pain in the rear for Skaven, because I couldn't do anything really against that. Night Runners with Slings just aren't going to cut the mustard in that sort of situation. I really think Skaven are desperately needing their black powder weaponry. If Warplock JEZZAILS, come on, CA, give us Warplock JEZZAILS. But that was a tough situation for me, just not really having the tools to bring down Luther, and not really having the option to bring those tools. I couldn't bring a Warplane cannon because the carronades would shut it down. I can't bring Globadiers because, one, they probably get gunned down really easily, but two, they just can't hit a flyer very effectively, which leaves Slings, which, yeah, they have no AP. But regardless, well played to my opponent. A pretty interesting build going so heavy on the DACA. I do understand what he was going for. He's probably expecting that I'd go with a more lightly armed sort of front line against anything. Against, say, a Doom Wheel, he would still have Luther Harkon and the cannons to shut down a Doom Wheel. Basically, against everything else, Skaven, the hand cannons, the gunnery mob, and the depth guard will be able to mince through it. Even rat ogres and that sort of stuff. He just needed a few tools to deal with big armored stuff, and he had those. I think the only problem is it's not much to deal with Stormmen and not much to deal with Night Runners and Gunner Runners, and that ended up biting him in the rear there. Progress, well played. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it entertaining and fun. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff to keep up with additional content, because there's going to be a lot of it now that the Vampire Coast has been released. Yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you found it entertaining, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.